Shoya is a piece of trash who bullied a deaf girl, but his life changes when karma hits him like truck goon, causing him to be an antisocial loser who now catches feelings for the girl he once bullied. Before this, Shoya was clearing up his life. He quits his job, sells all his belongings, withdraws all his money, and leaves it beside his mother to return all her money. With all his debts paid and all his sins on his shoulders, he looks down on his death, ready to jump off the bridge, but a firework snaps him back from his dark ideas, the ideas that come to him as a result of his past sins. Years ago, Shoya was a happy kid, spending his time with his friends, causing havoc, while a song from The Who bops in the background. They jump in lakes, play video games, and fool around without a care in the world, not knowing their whole world is about to change. As the class starts, the teacher announces that a new student is joining them, and Ueno teases Shoya that the new student is a girl. She walks in with the whole class paying attention to her, waiting for her to introduce herself, but as she stays quiet, the teacher taps her shoulders, which signals her to start moving. From her backpack, she pulls out a notebook, and inside is her introduction, telling them that her name is Shoko, and she asks them to use this book to talk to her. On the last page, she states that she is deaf, which surprises everyone except for Shoya, because to him, he imagines it as a video game with Shoko being the final boss. Following this, the girls introduce themselves to Shoko through the notebook, and when Ueno tries to make fun of her, Shoko doesn't hear a word she says and just continues on. Kawaii asks her about her nickname, and after they find out, it's the same as Shoya's, which he's not happy about. Then, at singing practice, while the others are awaiting their cue to sing, Shoko goes early and sings like a dying donkey, which Ueno is annoyed at. Later to class, Ueno gets scolded by the teacher for being awful at reading, which pisses her off. But when it's Shoko's turn, even though she can't properly read the words due to being deaf, the teacher lets her off, which annoys Ueno even more. After seeing Ueno's reaction, it's Shoya's turn, and he starts reading like Shoko, sounding like a choking pig. After school, while the girls laugh together, Shoko tries to join in the fun. But despite her best efforts to get close to them, Ueno and her friends ignore her, leaving her all alone. Shoko starts playing alone without friends, but Shoya suddenly shows up, throws pebbles at her, and tells her that she needs to change her approach if she wants to make friends. Shoko approaches him, and using her hands, she signals and asks Shoya to be his friend. But instead of accepting, he feels disgusted and eats some dirt in her eyes. Spider-Man style, Shoya looks at her.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
And instead of crying, she holds a faint smile on her face. The next day, a new teacher appears in class, teaching the students sign language to help them communicate with Shoko, encouraging them to learn sign language for Shoko's sake. After hearing this, Ueno stands up, stating that using her notebook is enough and easier for her. However, another student, Saara, stands up and unlike Ueno, Saara states that she would love to learn sign language for Shoko. Following this, Saara starts learning with Shoko how to say her own name, but being salty, Ueno starts mocking her. She keeps making horrible remarks at Saara, calling her a fat cow, and because of this, Saara eventually stops going to school and moves out. But Shoya sees this and takes it a step further. He and his friends write on the blackboard how Shoko is the one to blame for Saara's disappearance, while Ueno and Kawaii just laugh at them and do not stop their cruel actions. Suddenly, Shoko walks in carrying a flower, and when she sees what's on the board, Shoya sarcastically pretends that someone else wrote it down, and he erases the evil words off it. Despite her pain, Shoko writes on the board, thanking Shoya for his kind actions, and it pisses him off. Later, he screams in her ear, shocking her, and pretends he didn't do anything. Ueno looks at the shocked Shoko, and later, she confronts her and looks at her new ear device that helps her hearing. Ueno asks to look at it, and when Shoya sees it too and asks for it, Ueno takes it off Shoko's hand and kneads it to Shoya, which he throws away, calling it disgusting. Then, they keep doing it, throwing away her hearing device and bullying her, until one day, Shoya pulls too hard, causing Shoko's ear to bleed. However, after Shoko receives treatment, she confronts Shoya and his friends, but instead of telling him to slip in the shower and go to hell, she writes in her book, apologizing to him. Shoya rejects her apology, but she grabs him, which angers him even more, and instead of backing down, Shoko once again uses sign language to ask him to be her friend. Out of anger, he throws her book in the water, but Shoko jumps in to get it back. Suddenly, the tables turn, and Shoya is thrown in the water by his buddies, because days before, the class has a big announcement. The headmaster informs them that Shoko is absent because her mother called the school, asking about her daughter's missing hearing aids, and she states about she believes that her daughter is being bullied at school. Shoya and the others freeze while hearing this, and when the headmaster asks if anyone has any information and how the hearing aids are extremely expensive, Shoya remembers his hardworking mother, who works to make ends meet. Suddenly, the teacher calls Shoya and screams at him, telling him to stand up. He starts asking Ueno and the others what they think, and Ueno supports Shoya's actions and snitch on him. He starts panicking, stating that all of them contributed to Shoko's bullying. He calls out Ueno and Kawaii for talking behind Shoko's back. But after hearing this, Kawaii starts crying, acting like a victim, telling Shoya how cruel he is. Everyone looks at Shoya with disgust, and because of this, he is now hated. In the pool, he feels something under him, and when he reaches in, it's Shoko's notebook. Then he walks home alone while being wet, and when he gets home, his mother Miyako is on the phone, apologizing to the school about what her son did. Miyako confronts her son about his actions at school, and when he tells her to leave him alone, he sees his mother crying, disappointed in his actions. She tells him they're going to apologize to Shoko's family, but before they do so, Miyako makes a stop at the bank, and when Shoya looks closely, he sees that his mother has withdrawn a huge amount of money. When they do meet Shoko's mother, Miyako apologizes and hands her the money, but then Yeniko asks Miyako to talk privately, leaving Shoya to his own company. While he roams around alone, he accidentally walks into Shoko, who's feeding the birds, and when he tries to sneak away behind her, he slips and gets caught. Then Miyako picks him up, but Shoya is in shock to see her ears bleeding as she asks him to be a good boy from now on. Later at school, he starts getting bullied, violated, and abused by others like a housewife in the 50s. Then he clocks Shoko cleaning his table, which angers him, and when he confronts her, he sees that his table is squeaky clean. He gets aggressive, asking her what she was doing, but Shoko smiles faintly at him again, which angers him even more, telling her to drop the act. Shoko starts tussling with her, not understanding what her reactions mean, but suddenly, Shoko bites him. They start fighting, and after Shoko uses a UFC move, she climbs on top of him and makes Shoya her little bitch. Following this, Shoya cleans his table, which is filled with insults, telling him to die, and here he realizes that Shoko was helping him. Afterward, Shoko transfers to another school, and she never comes back. In the present, Shoya goes to a sign language class looking for Shoko, but then she shows up behind him, and when he sees her, she reminds him of their painful past. Shoko is shocked to see an old face, and while she tries to fake a smile, she can't do it and quickly runs away. Shoya chases her down and almost misses her as she tries hiding from him, but when he clocks her, he starts stuttering. He returns her old notebook back and using sign language, tells her that she forgot it, which shocks her to see him using sign language. When she asks how he knows the language, he confesses that he learned it and returns the book. Then, using sign language, he asks her to be his friend, but after seeing her reaction, he slaps himself, realizing it's what she asked him all those years ago. Shoko starts crying after what he asks her, and it carries to his dreams, where they become friends. A voice calls for him, waking him up from his sleep, and it is his cute little sister Maria, telling him breakfast is ready. Downstairs, Miyako prepares the food, and after she serves some to Shoya, she starts smiling, thanking him for the money and his hard work. She suddenly asks why he wanted to take his own life, and instead of denying it, he calmly tries to explain, but before he gets to say anything, Miyako starts going nuts. She threatens to burn the money, telling him to promise not to commit, and it reminds him of the painful past, so he promises not to take his own life. But while Miyako is happy to hear that, she accidentally sets the money on fire, burning millions of yen, starting issues with the IRS. On his way to school, Shoya thinks to himself of what he tried to do, taking his own life at first, but ending up making friends with the girl he once bullied, Shoko, and how it makes him embarrassed thinking about it. He remembers how his old friend, Shimada, spread word of him being a bully, a sin of his past, causing him to get outcasted. Now, everywhere Shoya goes, he refuses to look at people's faces out of anxiety and closes his ears to shut himself out completely from existing. Then in class, Kawaii tries talking to him, but he avoids her eyesight and answers her sparingly. Every time he sees people talk among themselves, he imagines that they're talking badly about him, calling him a lonely donkey loser who should just clap himself and die. Which reminds him of how his old friends shut him off from their friendship. At lunchtime, while he is eating by himself, he looks to his right to see an overweight Deku, also eating by himself. Shoya thinks to himself about how he can meet Shoko again, finding excuses just to see her again. Back home, while being unaware, Miyako surprises her son and apologizes for burning the money he earned, but she tells him that she doesn't want money that is a result of his son's life. The next day, after arriving at school, the green-haired guy is getting demanded by a student to give him his bike, and when he refuses, they get into a fight, and when the green-haired guy sees Shoya, he cries for his help. Shoya pulls up and tells the bully that he can use his bike instead, but after school, he doesn't return it, so instead, Shoya walks home. He takes his misfortune as a sign that the universe doesn't want him to meet Shoko, but suddenly, he finds a bread coupon, and he takes it as a sign to meet her again. Following this, he tries seeing Shoko, but a little boy, Yuzuru, tells him she's not there, despite her being at the back. Yuzuru then asks Shoya if he's really Shoko's friend, and when he doesn't get an answer, he closes the door on Shoya. When Shoko asks who it is, Yuzuru tells her there is no one but a fat, stupid rat offering some car warranty.
What do you mean by that?
Meanwhile, Shoya walks home alone feeling dejected. But then, the green-haired guy calls out for him, telling him that he got his bike back. The guide informs him that he found it dumped somewhere and he's glad to find it. And after seeing his kindness, Shoya can look him in the eyes and see his sweet and chunky face. The fat Midoriya introduces himself as Nagatsuka, and after this day, he starts getting friendly with Shoya, greeting him in the morning, calling him handsome and stuff, no diddy. They hang out after school, watching movies where Nagatsuka cries watching the new Joker movie of how bad it is, and not before long, Shoya enjoys his new friendship. Later, they eat lunch together, and after being alone for so long, Shoya asks Nagatsuka what it means to be friends. Instead of answering with words, Nagatsuka asks Shoya for his hand, starts giving him an awkward yet dope handshake, and he tells Shoya that friendship is beyond words and logic. Then, Shoya tries again to meet Shoko, but Yuzuru declines him again, stating that he is Shoko's baby daddy, which shocks Shoya to find out that Shoko is like Drake, causing him to drop his newly bought bread. Yuzuru scolds him, telling him to eat dirt if he's here just to make himself feel good. But before he closes the door, Nagatsuka pops up and starts getting aggressive, telling Yuzuru to let Shoya meet Shoko. Yuzuru insults back, telling this fat slob to lay off the pizza, which angers Nagatsuka even more. But because of them, it gets the attention of others, including Shoko. Shoya tries splitting up Nagatsuka, but when he sees the people crowding him, he runs away and Shoko chases after him. Then, Yuzuru and Nagatsuka spy on them talking, but because they only have a camera, they can't hear a thing. Shoya waves his hands around, and while Nagatsuka is confused, Yuzuru explains that he's using sign language. Because of this, Nagatsuka tells Yuzuru to translate their conversation, and Yuzuru starts roasting Nagatsuka, calling him Captain Cholesterol. After he has fooled around, Yuzuru translates for real where Shoya tells Shoko about how he wanted to see her this whole time, and it shocks Yuzuru to see that Shoko feels the same. Shoya pulls out his newly bought bread, and they start feeding the fish, but then Shoko shows him her notebook and thanks him for returning it. She opens it, and while Shoya tries to stop her from seeing the insults written inside the book, she accidentally drops it into the river. Without thinking, Shoko climbs the railings and jumps down to get it, and Shoya does the same to save her. While underwater, he almost sees Shoko's plots, but after he rises up, the book is on his head. They get out of the river, wet and awkward. And after they split up, Yuzuru feels conflicted after what he has just seen. Back home, Yuzuru, who has pictures of dead animals on his walls, shares a picture of Shoya jumping off the bridge with the public. Following this, the picture spreads, and at school, a student shows him the picture, and not long after, a teacher calls him to the principal's office, causing him to get suspended. He is forced to stay at home during his suspension. But when his hot legs of a sister ask him to pick up her daughter, Maria, he heavy-heartedly agrees. Then, Shoya spends time with Maria at the park before going home, and there, they meet a rugged Yuzuru, sleeping inside the playground. After he wakes up, Yuzuru initially treats Shoya with hostility, asking Shoya if he's angry at him for spreading the picture of him jumping off a bride. But even after what he did, Shoya doesn't feel any anger towards Yuzuru, stating that after watching Vinland Saga, he has no enemies. Suddenly, Maria screams out that she's hungry, and with this cue, Shoya goes home, but a moment after he leaves, Yuzuru collapses out of hunger and fatigue, so Shoya brings him along back home. Miyako welcomes Yuzuru warmly, and while he is reluctant at first, he folds and eats okonomiyaki with them. Later, Yuzuru spends his night with Shoya, unable to sleep, remembering how he made Shoko upset. Then, Yuzuru sneaks out barefooted while it's raining, and on his track, he sees a dead frog and takes a picture of it. Shoya appears while carrying an umbrella to give to Yuzuru, to which he half-heartedly agrees. Suddenly, Shoya takes a look at Yuzuru's feet, which shocks him, and he hands Yuzuru a pair of shoes to wear. Then, while Shoya accompanies Yuzuru to walk back home, he asks Shoya what's his intention with Shoko, calling him out on his hypocrisy of trying to be nice to her despite once being her bully. Yuzuru starts insulting him, calling Shoya a disgusting idiot who's trying hard to be a saint now. But instead of fighting back, Shoya accepts every insult Yuzuru throws at him, deeming himself a horrible human being who doesn't deserve to live. However, Shoya also doesn't want to make Shoko cry anymore, and after hearing this, Yuzuru softens up. After they reach Yuzuru's place, he apologizes for his small lie to Shoya and reveals that he is actually a she, who is also Shoko's little sister, surprising Shoya. Suddenly, her mother, Yaniko, shows up and slaps Shoya, giving him the Will Smith special before pulling Yuzuru back home. Inside, Shoko starts apologizing to Yuzuru for causing him to run away, and Yaeko orders both of her daughters to stay away from Shoya, the bully. However, Yuzuru shows up the next day at Shoya's place, and Nagatsuka gets friendly with him, offering to show him his Boku no Pico action figures. But after Shoya informs him of Yuzuru's real gender, Nagatsuka teleports far away from her. Then, Nagatsuka meets Shoko and introduces himself as the real best girl in this movie. Shoya pulls out his phone to trade numbers with her, but after asking which old friend she wants to meet besides him, Shoko reveals that she wants to meet Saara. Back at school, Shada is thinking hard about fulfilling Shoko's request, and he notices Kawaii, who went to grade school with him in Saara. He gathers the courage and asks her if she knows how to contact Saara, and Kawaii tells him the school Saara goes to. However, Shoya doesn't have the money to travel there, but like a sugar daddy, Nagatsuka hands him some money to spend to help his journey. Suddenly, Yuzuru shows up with Shoko and informs Shoya that Shoko wants to join him on his journey. Then they ride the train together and steal glances at each other. Shoya receives a message from Shoko, who thanks him for doing this and how happy she is to meet Saara again, which leaves a warm feeling inside Shoya. At the train station, someone screams out for them, which turns out to be Saara, who still remembers them both. Then, they sit together, and Saara uses sign language to talk to Shoko, telling her how sorry she is for leaving back then and how she still thinks about her. While the girls talk among themselves, it leaves Shoya as the third wheel. But after they start talking about their melon sizes, Shoya gets uncomfortable and leaves for a bit. During his walk, he runs into Ueno, who's giving out coupons as a furry, and it surprises him to see her again. The next day, he receives a video from Saara, showing her and Shoko in a karaoke, which impresses Shoya with how easy it is for her to get close to Shoko. He thinks to himself that he should reunite Shoko with Ueno. And days later, he and Nagatsuka go to her workplace, thinking it's a place of playful furries, but only to be disappointed to find out it's a cat cafe. When Ueno sees Shoya, she hides under the counter, covering up her nerves, and while the boys are looking for her, they can't spot her as she's wearing a disguise to avoid getting recognized. Meanwhile, Shoko and her grandma are in a hospital, and they just receive bad news. When Shoya gets home, Yuzuru is there and he hands her a cat pouch to give to her sister. But when Yuzuru gets home to give it to Shoko, she's lying on the bed in tears, heartbroken after the doctor tells her that her hearing will never come back. Days later, while Shoya is on his bike, Ueno randomly gets on it and acts like they're still friends, but then she notices Shoko across the street. Ueno apologizes to Shoya for what happened in the past and asks to reconcile, but Shoya rejects her invitation and tells her to get off. She looks across the street to Shoko and notices that she has a cat pouch from her workplace. Shoya tells her that he hands Shoko the pouch, and while at first Ueno gets off the bike and seems fine with it, she chases after Shoko and starts acting friendly with her before taking her hearing aid like the old days. Shoya comes in to defend Shoko, taking back her hearing aid, but Ueno quickly grabs it back. She can't believe what she's seeing, the bully and his victim as friends, and mocks Shoya for being lame as a person who tries to fix the sin of his past. Ueno returns the hearing aid to Shoko before leaving, and when Shoko asks Shoya what they were talking about, he assures her that it was nothing important. Days later, Shoko wakes up Yuzuru in the morning with a new hairstyle, and when Yuzuru asks her about it, Shoko just awkwardly smiles and walks away. Yuzuru messages Shoya to meet them at the bridge, and when he gets there, it takes him by surprise to see her rocking a ponytail. They lock eyes with each other and Shoko starts using her voice to speak, and while she tries her best, she sounds like Donald Duck on crack, which makes her sad. Shoya tries cheering her up before leaving, but Shoko stops him and gives him a present. Shoya opens it up, and while he doesn't have a clue about what he's looking at, he thanks her. While nervous, Shoko gathers her courage and screams at Shoya, telling him that she likes him. However, this dumb idiot misinterprets what she said, thinking she's talking about how the moon looks like his cheeks after a shave.
What? What the fuck?
And out of embarrassment, Shoko runs home. Then Shoya tells Nagatsuka about what just happened, to which neither has an idea of what she's trying to say while Shoko is at home, fluttering her legs out of frustration and telling Yuzuru about the misfortunate miscommunication. The next day, the class is in awe of Kawaii, who just changed her hairstyle, which reminds Shoya of Shoko, so she asks Kawaii why girls change their hairstyles. She tells him that there is no reason, but she informs him that Mashiko wants to be his friend. And after hearing this, Shoya is able to look Mashiba in his eyes and his massive eyebrows. Later, Shoya's friends meet each other, and Nagatsuka gets jealous of Mashiba for being Shoya's new buddy, but Shoko is not present, and it makes Shoya think that she's avoiding him. Yuzuru asks him why he thinks that way, and after Shoya explains how Shoko thinks that the moon is lovely, Yuzuru holds back her laughter, telling Shoya that he should ask her to hang out. Later at night, Shoko gets a message from Shoya, asking her to hang out, and she flutters her feet out of joy. And Yuzuru is happy to see her sister happy. Then the gang goes to a theme park, but Yuzuru notices Ueno there with them, being friendly with Shoko, and she doesn't like it. They then go ride a roller coaster and Shoya sits beside Saara, and she starts yapping some philosophical nonsense about how when riding the roller coaster, she feels fear every time she rides it. But even then, she dares to face it with bravery, unlike her old self. As the ride goes full speed, Saara raises her arms in bravery while Shoya holds on tightly in fear. After the ride, Shoko's legs turn into jelly, and when Shoya asks her if she's okay in sign language, both Mashiba and Kawaii are impressed and start praising him. But Nagatsuka gets jealous, telling them to get their slimy hands off his precious friend. Then, with the gang having fun, Shoya also starts feeling happiness again, enjoying his friendship, deepening their bond, and even being able to look Ueno in her eyes. However, Ueno asks him to accompany her to get food. But when they get there, the seller turns out to be Shimada, Shoya's former best friend, who tells Ueno to not play peacemaker between them. Shoya is in shock, walks away, and puts a wall between him and them. Ueno tries to calm him down and tells him that she just wants them to get back as friends. While Shoya hates her actions, he realizes that he's doing the same thing with Shoko and Saara. After calming down, Ueno states that things would have been better if Shoko never got in their lives in the first place, but Shoya tells her that everything that happened to him was his own fault. Suddenly, Ueno pulls Shoko away to go ride on the Ferris wheel with her, but before she does, Yuzuru gives Shoko her camera, as she wants to ride the roller coaster again. Days later, Yuzuru visits Shoya in his room, pulls out a tablet, and informs him that he has the footage inside the Ferris wheel. In the video, they can only see Ueno's plumpful legs and the voices of her and Shoko. There, Ueno tells Shoko that she hates her and admits that she hates how Shoko keeps trying to befriend her, despite her attempts to badmouth her and treat her like trash. She tells Shoko that it was her fault that Shoya no longer had friends and asks her for a handshake so they can continue hating each other. But Shoko refuses to do so, telling Ueno how she hates herself and how sorry she is. Out of anger, Ueno slaps her, telling her to stop apologizing like a little weasel. The footage shocks both Shoya and Yuzuru, but after what he has just seen, Shoya wants to make Shoko love herself. At school, Mashiba asks Shoya about Shoko's relationship with Ueno and reveals that Kawaii told him that Shoko was once bullied and that he hates bullies. After hearing this, Shoya confronts Kawaii, as she told people about the past, but she starts playing victim like a little telling Mashiba and Nagatsuka that Shoya and only him bullied Shoko in the past, and how she was actually trying to stop him from doing so. Shoya feels sick hearing this and he runs away from school, ignoring Nagatsuka who's trying to calm him down. He rides his bike and pedals to no end until he finally stops, admitting that he hates himself too. Later, he walks into Shoko alongside Yuzuru and Saara, who ask him if he's okay. Suddenly, the others arrive, and Ueno is there with them. While Kawaii is here to apologize for her previous action, she also starts blaming others for Shoko's bullying, deeming herself innocent. However, Ueno refuses to take her nonsense and calls her out for it, deeming her a hypocrite to think she's innocent, as she was also laughing along during Shoko's bullying. Shoya feels sick to his stomach and tells them to stop, stating that everything was his fault. When the others try to reason with him, Shoya starts his roast session, calling all of them out on their hypocrisy and lies, which upsets all of them, including Nagatsuka and Mashiba, who try their best to be his friend. After they all leave, Shoya tries inviting Shoko to hang out, but seeing her facial reaction, trying to force herself to smile, stops Shoya in his words. Back home, while Yuzuru is reading through her sister's notebook, her grandma invites her for a midnight snack and tells Yuzuru how worried she is about her, as she is always worrying about her sister Shoko. Yuzuru tells her grandma that she does this for herself, and the grandma praises her, deeming her a good girl with a pure heart who has been a blessing in her grandma's life. At night, Yuzuru has a nightmare, an image of Shoko dying, and when she wakes up, she hugs her grandma tightly in tears. The next day, after he gets off work, Shoya brings some bread to Shoko so they can feed the fish again, but as he gets to their usual bridge, Shoko is not there. He starts feeding the fish by himself, but as he looks across, he sees Yuzuru in her school uniform, crying. He tries just to ignore her in her own company, but Yuzuru shows up in good spirits. Shoya asks her why she is crying, and while she thinks it's none of his business, Shoya thinks it is, stating he cares about her. Then, he walks her to a funeral and wishes her to be strong. Inside, Yuzuru and her family grieve the death of their grandmother. But after the funeral is done, a butterfly lands on her fingers, and she lets it go, but how she has to let go of her grandma. The butterfly approaches Shoko, but unlike Yuzuru, she doesn't try to catch it. In the summer break, Shoya takes Shoko on a friendly date to an artistic visual gallery, but on their exploration, they get further away from each other. When Shoya looks at her, it reminds him of the old her, but suddenly, he slips and starts sliding down. Shoko starts apologizing, and when Shoya asks why, she tells him that with her, he will be unhappy. Shoya rejects her suggestion and asks her to keep hanging out with him during the summer break. At home, he imagines himself stopping seeing Nagatsuka and the others in their eyes again, and he starts singing a song about how he wants to love people, but he stops himself, thinking he can't fix the relationship he broke. Then, he starts hanging out with Shoko and Yuzuru almost every day, non-stop, forcing himself to always smile. But one day, she invites Shoya to her place to celebrate their mother, Iko's birthday. They bake the birthday cake together, and when Eiko shows up, she's about to send Shoya to an isekai if it wasn't for Yuzuru, who convinces her mother to let Shoya stay to celebrate. Then, Eiko informs Yuzuru that she has submitted her pictures to a competition after Shako's recommendation, and while she disagrees with their decision, Yuzuru just rolls with it. She then asks Shoya to join them for a fireworks festival, and while he tries to reject their offer, they force him to come with them. Then the day of the fireworks festival arrives, and while Shoya sits with Shoko and her family to enjoy the show, so do his other friends. Yuzuru and the mother go for food, leaving Shoya alone with Shoko. They get to talking about Shoko's birthday, and he promises to celebrate it together, which makes him blush to his own words. Then the second fireworks start, and while Shoko can't hear, she enjoys it through the vibration in her cup. Suddenly, Shoko gets up to leave, stating that she needs to study, and when Shoya tries to walk her back, she tells him to stay and enjoy the show before saying her goodbyes. Yuzuru and Eiko show up, and Yuzuru asks Shoya to fetch her camera back home. So Shoya goes back to the apartment, but when he gets there, the place is dark with no signs of Shoko. Just as he picks up the camera, the firework lights the room, and because of it, he sees across from him Shoko on the balcony. She climbs up the railings, wanting to end her own life, and while Shoya is puzzled at first, he quickly realizes what's about to happen, so he rushes to save her, but Shoya falls over to a table. As Shoko reaches the top, Shoya is nowhere near her, and he screams out her name, hoping it will stop her from jumping, which it doesn't. However, with the plot armor on his side, Shoya manages to catch her in his final grasp, saving her from her death. As her weight pulls him down, he uses both his arms to hold her. He prays to God, begging him for help, promising to him that he will from now live life truthfully, look at people's faces, and stop running away. Shoya looks down and sees the scar on her ears, realizing he hasn't apologized to her for it, and he starts apologizing, saying how he has feelings for her. As Shoko pulls herself up, Shoya helps her with his own body weight, causing himself to fall, trading his life for hers. A life for a life. As he lands on the water underneath, his whole life, his mother, his friends, and precious memories flash before his eyes while he bleeds red underwater. The next day, Yuzuru greets Miyako at the hospital, and she tells Yuzuru that they should visit Shoya together. Yuriko shows up, and while Miyako starts apologizing as if she's at fault, Yuriko goes down to her head and knees, begging for forgiveness. Yuzuru joins in, telling her how her son saved her sister, but Miyako begs them to raise their heads, crying her feelings out. Meanwhile, Shoko is getting ragdolled by Ueno, who is furious at Shoko that because of her, Shoya almost died. She scolds Shoko for being selfish and not caring about how others care for her, but just as Ueno is about to slap her, Yuriko gives her the Will Smith. They start fighting, but Miyako shows up to stop them, separating them from each other. Then, she walks towards the wounded and traumatized Shoko, who starts crying and begging the mother of the man who saved her to forgive her. Back home, Yuzuru takes down all of her dead animal pictures, and when Eiko asks why, Yuzuru states that she started taking it to stop Shoko from wanting to die, but now she doesn't know what to do. Later, Nagatsuka comes to the hospital, but there he spots Ueno rejecting Shoko entrance to the Shoya's hospital room. Nagatsuka tries to open it for her, but after failing, he takes her for a talk. Shoko tells Nagatsuka about how she feels she has ruined the friendship that Shoya tried building, and Nagatsuka tells her that Shoya is someone precious to him, his best friend who accepted this green-haired fatty for who he is. And because of this, Nagatsuka starts crying, saying that he needs him back. Shoko writes back, saying she wants to fix everything she destroyed. Shoko starts with Kawaii, who scolds her for attempting something stupid and hugs her, stating that Shoko needs to learn to love the things she hates about herself and move forward. Mashiba picks up the note and just says that he's glad Shoko is okay. Then, Shoko visits Saara, and she tells Shoko that she still is a coward who doesn't know how to face her fears, but Shoko assures her that she can change from now on. Then, Shoko tries her luck with Ueno, but keeps getting aired every time, just like how your non-existent girlfriend aired you when I invited her to watch some anime. After a few days, Shoko covers up Ueno with an umbrella, forcing her to confront her feelings. At night, Shoko has a dream of her past, but there, Shoya doesn't exist. She imagines Shoya's words coming to her, telling her how he wants to die. Shoko wakes up in fear and starts running to the bridge where she spends her time with Shoya. With her feelings conflicted, Shoko starts crying hysterically, and the sound of her cries reaches Shoya, waking him up. He takes off all the medical support on his body, and while being weak, he heads to the bridge, leaving the hospital. After reaching the bridge, he stumbles on the railings and the vibration alerts Shoko. They're both in shock to see each other as if the gods intended them to meet, but still in disbelief. Shoko touches him, and is surprised to know that he's not a ghost. Shoya starts laughing and drops to his knees, but as he looks up, Shoko is shaking in tears, still in disbelief to see the man he loves alive. Shoya apologizes for everything he did to her in the past and after, stating that he hurt her, but Shoko tells him that he's wrong, saying that he almost died because of her inability to change from the past. She says that she should have not existed and died, but he tells her that he once felt the same way. He tells her that neither of them deserves to die, and he wants her to help him live. Shoya gets closer to her and takes her hand, making it a ball, and holds it together with his hand. But he quickly gets flustered, and Shoko laughs at him and signals him that it's a promise that they will help each other to live. Days later, Miyako drives Shoya back home, and after arriving, Maria starts tweaking, showing how glad she is to see him alive. Miyako notices Ueno stalking from afar and tells Shoya that she was the one who nursed him the entire time. Then, Ueno tells Shoya how horrible she is as a person as she still can't like Shoko, but she also tells him that his old friends were the ones who saved him from drowning. And hearing this, Shoya looks up and sees her face. She welcomes him back to life, and he thanks her for nursing him. Back home, Shoya is in shock to see Miyako cutting up Yuriko's hair, and yet Echo apologizes for what happened, which he accepts. Suddenly, a random dude pops up and Miyako tells Yuriko it's Maria's daddy, which reminds her to tell Shoya that Yuzuru is waiting in his room. There, Yuzuru shows him that her picture has won awards while her grades are plummeting, so she begs Shoya to tutor her. Yuzuru tells him that she has started to go to school more, wanting to fulfill her family's expectations. The next day, Shoya prepares himself for his school's festival, practicing his smile, even his greetings and apologies. Just as he's about to leave, he sees Shoko's previous gift, which turns out to be for the plants. Then he rides his bike to school, and in front he meets up with Shoko. Inside, when the students realize that Shoya is back to school after what happened, he feels extreme anxiety and tells Shoko the truth, that he is a pathetic loser who has no friends and can't look at people's faces. However, Shoko doesn't see the issue and holds his hand while he walks with his head looking down. As they get to his class, everyone turns their attention to Shoya, and while he tries his best to smile at first, he folds and hides in the bathroom. While he's hyperventilating, Nagatsuka is outside his door, and when Shoya keeps looking down, not wanting to see his face, Nagatsuka screams his name to get his attention and starts crying. He hugs Shoya, telling him how happy he is that he's still alive, and telling him that what happened on the bridge is now water under the bridge. He begs Shoya to not leave him, and Shoya apologizes for what he did and thanks him for everything. Then, when Mishiba and Kawaii show up, Shoya looks straight down, unable to see their faces, but Kawaii steps forward and hands him 1,000 origamis as a prayer for his sake, while stating that she didn't manage to reach 1,000. Shoya accepts it, and he thanks and apologizes to Kawaii and Mishiba. Ueno shows up, calling them cheesy, and when Kawaii scolds her, they start their beef, only to be stopped by Savara, who apologizes to Shoya for being unable to change. Ueno assures Shoko that they're not talking about something serious and calls her a moron in sign language, which shocks and pleases Shoko to see Ueno learning sign language, unlike her old self. Ueno walks away embarrassed to the festival, and before they leave, Shoya asks the others for a favor that he wants to see the festival alongside them. Then Shoya looks around the festival, slowly opening up her ears so she can listen to everyone, and his eyes so he can finally see all of their faces. As the barrier drops, his world opens up to everyone, to his friends, to his family, and because of this, Shoya tears up, realizing what he has been missing. With his heart moved and his soul cleansed from his past sins by the people closest to him, he can finally see the light at the end of his tunnel, a light of hope, the light of his life. If you watched this anime recap and made it to the end, comment "Karma hits harder than Truck-kun." If you like anime recaps like this, watch this video.